Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the BCCC Business Hub. I'm Carolina Alberna, CEO at the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, and I will be your MC here today. First, for those who are not familiar with the BCCC, we're a membership-based association that supports its members through information networking and advocacy. And for nearly 50 years, we've been building relationships between Brazil and Canada, strengthening the bilateral relationship in investment, trade, best practices in mutual growth and prosperity. Our relationships are private and public, featuring managing directors and decision makers from companies and institutions of all sizes. And our volunteer board of directors has expertise, knowledge, and connections that can only be seen by active players in the Brazil-Canada market. If you're interested in learning more about the BCCC, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. The BCCC Business Hub is a new initiative that we created to support Brazilian companies from all sectors interested in establishing a presence in Canada. We gathered a group of member companies that can support your every need, and today we'll be introducing some of those companies as well as a checklist of what you need to know before coming to Canada. Our speakers today will showcase the main points to consider in a variety of subjects, such as why Canada, market entry requirements, immigration, corporate law, and supply chain. And by the end of the event, we will put together this list that I mentioned to be shared with you, where you can be able to follow all the main topics to be addressed. This is the first of a series of webinars and virtual events that will be provided by the Business Hub, and we hope that you find the information fruitful for your business. We're also launching a website page at braskenchamber.org, where you can find not only the presentations from today, as well as support materials that can help you with your business. And then finally, when you are ready to take the final steps and to set up in Canada, please consider becoming a member of the Chamber so we can support you with your networking needs, brand awareness, among other things. Just a couple housekeeping rules. Speakers will be available to answer questions after the presentations are done. All questions should be asked through the Q&A box located in the bottom of your screen. We have allowed attendees to upvote and answer questions to incentive positive discussion, so feel free to add your comments and questions throughout the presentations. We will do our best to address all points raised during the Q&A, but if for some reason we run out of time, we will revert to you with an answer in the following days. Another thing we'd like to ask you guys is if you can add in the chat the company you work for, why you're here today, what are sectors you're interested in, and we will try to answer all the questions that are relevant to you as well, by knowing who is here with us today. Without further ado, I would like to invite Elise Racicot, Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner Brazil at the Trade Commissioner Services, Global Affairs Canada, to say a few words during our opening remarks. Elise, thanks for being here, and it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Carol. Muito obrigada. It's so nice to be here and to be part of this this launch of the new Business Hub. I think there's never too many partners when we want to do a new business venture, when we want to invest in a new country. Even if I like to think that Canada is one of the easiest places to do that, having a lot of help from different from different people in different organizations along the way is only a plus. And the more the merrier, or I think the more help we can get, the better the experience. When we hear from entrepreneurs or from large companies all across the spectrum of investors, and believe me, there are many. Brazil is among the top 10 investors in Canada as a country, number 9 actually in terms of the ultimate country of investment for the last year available, where data is available. So a really strong relationship. So having all this help is key, actually, to making things work in your favor and understand the rules of the place you're going to start a new business in, and trying to take over the world from there. So I think it's a great news to hear that the BCCC will also play a role in that. And so congratulations first and foremost to Carol and the team on putting this initiative together. This will complement a lot of the efforts that are being done by us in the federal government with the Global Affairs Canada, with the Trade Commissioner Service, where you will hear today from Marcelo, from our team, a little bit more in details what are some of the advantages of considering Canada as a place to invest and become more international. But there's also Invest in Canada, which helps mostly for the bigger investors who are looking to understand what is the value proposition of different places across the country and making it the offer integrated, because it can sometimes be a bit daunting when you're looking at a continental country like Canada or Brazil, quite frankly. There's also a lot of the cities and regional development agencies that are involved, the provinces and territories as well. They all want to welcome new investors to Canada, of course. And so this is a work that we do jointly, and that we'll be really happy to have the BCCC also involved in playing a role in that. Great investment relationship between Canada and Brazil. I mentioned how important Brazilian investment is in Canada, but it's also true here in Brazil that Canadian investment is really important. And I think that's a really good way to look at a relationship and see how strong the ties are between two countries, even more so than exports. I think investment really shows true long-term commitment between a country and another, believing in a future together, and betting that this will be good for the long run. And I think Canada and Brazil are showing that in huge ways. We share a lot also as two countries. We were continental-sized countries. We're stewards of important natural resources. We have an important role to play in this new economy and reaching net zero emissions. We also are multicultural and respect the same kind of values of democracy and human rights. We are innovators. I think being country of immigration and really diverse makes it so that we had to innovate, and we continue to be quite innovative in the way that we do things. There's actually a lot of research in common between Canada and Brazil, and that's certainly a sign of that. We have similar challenges in sectors of interest as well. So it really dovetails well for many companies to start looking at the other of those two countries, of those two big continental countries of the Americas, as a next step in their way forward. I will say also that, and you'll hear more about that today, but just as a teaser, I guess, Canada is probably the best place to become global if you're looking at that, but it's also one of the best places to innovate if you're looking at key technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, or otherwise. We have been blessed with great brains coming from all kinds of places who made Canada their home in a way, and who do create really diverse and vibrant ecosystems across the country. We have great people that are attracted by that, and talent that is available. But also we do have, I like to say that we're the only G7 countries that has a free trade agreement with all of the others. And so it means that from Canada, you can use it as a propulsion board, if you'd like, to start doing business also in Europe, in Asia, and of course in North America, at a really competitive cost, with lots of tax breaks, especially if you're looking at doing a lot of research and innovation. So definitely a place that you should consider, being a small or medium or a large company. There's always going to be a space for all of those. So without further ado, I know there's a lot of people here today that will bring really valuable information to you, so I don't want to stand in the way. But again, really excited to be a part of this, and really excited to see this new project unfold. So congratulations to the BCCC, and I hope everyone has a great session today.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the words, and congratulations for all the work that you and all your team have been doing in Brazil to promote Canada for Brazilian companies, to support them as well as like support Canadian companies entering Brazil. It's part of the work that you've been doing that I think has contributed to this great relationship that both countries have. So as you mentioned, we have a lot of speakers here today. So without further ado, I would like to invite Marcelo Tavares, Senior Investment Officer at the Consulate General of Canada in São Paulo, to present on Doing Business in Canada Market Overview. Marcelo has a pivotal role at the consulate supporting Brazilian companies looking to invest in Canada. So Marcelo, over to you.
Boa tarde, good afternoon. It's good to be here. I feel privileged. There's such a good group of people this afternoon, just presenting on their experiences, different areas, but everything you need in terms of support to understand how to do business in Canada. So I feel honored to be part of the panel today. So my role here at the consulate is to help Brazilian companies understand why Canada is an interesting destination for business expansion. The next slide, Carolina, please. Canada might not be the first option for Brazilian companies. They're looking at North America through the US, but once we understand why Canada is more competitive in terms of cost, in terms of support, then becomes a viable option. So Canada usually ranks number 1, number 2, or number 3 in different researches from institutions like the World Bank, The Economist, KPMG, as the best place to do business, one of the easiest places with less bureaucracy and red tape. If you're an international company willing to internationalize your business in terms of cost as well, lowest cost in G7, a recent study by KPMG. So all of those things really put Canada as one of the top options for international companies that want to internationalize their business. Next, please. I usually tell companies that there are a few pillars that stand Canada apart. One is talent. The other one is support on R&D. The other one is cost. And clusters, access to other markets, as Elise had mentioned on her presentation. So let's start with talent. Canada has a very strong pool of qualified labor. 55–60% of the workforce in Canada has high school degrees and university degrees. The best proportion of entrepreneurs in G7. So talent pool in Canada is available and accessible. The other pillar is interesting for companies that want to internationalize is support on R&D and innovation. There are a different number of programs in Canada in different regions to support your company, to support your business, from tax breaks, incentives, subsidies in hiring the talents. So through the support of the Canadian government, the BCCC, and the other colleagues here at this presentation, you can have access to different programs. You can understand which program is best suited for your business. The third pillar is financial stability, and I like to not only talk about financial stability, but cost. Cost in Canada is usually cheaper in terms of operational costs, but also labor costs compared to other G7 countries, the US and Europe. So Canada becomes an interesting option if you want to set up your business, tap into the different programs from government in terms of R&D, support for talent, in viable cost that will allow you to soft land your company, leverage different programs on R&D and innovation, and then sell to your clients in other markets, being North America, being Europe, being Asian countries as well. Since 2019, the Canadian government started a program called Super Clusters, which is a combination of different federal, provincial, municipal programs supporting innovation hubs. So Carolina, next slide, please. So these super clusters, they run from East Coast to the West Coast. They focus on different sectors of expertise. It's a $1 billion program funded by the government with another $1 billion by industry. And you can see on the slide the different areas of focus, anything from digital technology to AI, which is very interesting and very exciting at the time. A lot of Brazilian companies in different sectors investing on AI, developing solutions on AI. So in those clusters, you will find talent, support from government, support from industry. So you'll find the best scenario, the best ecosystem to incorporate your company, to develop your business. And one thing we hear back from Brazilian companies or international companies that have decided to incorporate and develop their business in Canada is that the friendly and the collaborative spirit of the Canadian entrepreneur ecosystem. So this is something especially important for companies that are going international for the first time and choosing the first international destination for their business. It's much easier to start working in a country where you have government support, you have support from private sector as well, and a number of programs that will help you leverage and grow your company, grow your solutions. This is exactly what you will find in Canada. Next slide, Carolina, please. I think one thing that is also worth mentioning, and I think Elise mentioned this on her presentation, is the access to international markets. Canada today is probably the country that has the largest number of free trade agreements, 14 free trade agreements reaching close to 51 countries. This is a consumption market of 1.5 billion people. So you will see on the slide the different countries and different regions you can access to from Canada. So from a pure financial and a tax point of view, having your business in Canada, selling to clients in those regions, it's much more beneficial than from elsewhere. So you're covered by the free trade agreements. You'll have a privileged position to sell solutions, to sell your products in those markets. Next, please. On top of all that, if you want to reach out to a different market, understand if there are business opportunities in a third market for your company, the government will support you. Once you're established in Canada, you can access the Trade Commissioner Services support, which is like a public consulting service. It will help you understand business opportunities in the particular market, understand regulations, understand barriers to entry in a certain market, depending on your product. So without having to dedicate human and financial resources, the government will help you understand and list the key priority markets that you should be looking at in terms of developing your business further. So Canada is a very interesting destination itself, but also an interesting destination if you're looking to grow beyond North America. So in a nutshell, I didn't want to take too much of the time. I know we've got a lot of speakers today, a lot of information. You've got my contact details on the last slide, please. Very happy to answer any questions, to be contacted by companies. It's the first time I do my pitch in English, so sorry if anything was a bit off, but very happy to talk to the companies that are interested in developing some conversations, getting some answers about a few of the questions they might have. So thank you again. Thank you again for the opportunity, and look forward to speaking to some of the participants today. Thanks, Carolina.
Thanks, Marcelo. That was a quick one. I was expecting we have some time for questions. I don't know if anyone here has any questions specifically for Marcelo to really understand how the Trade Commissioner Service can help them with that initial assessment and to really understand what's available here for them in Canada as well. So in the meantime, and Marcelo, stay there because we can come back from questions after Paula's presentation. So without further ado, I would like to invite now Paula Saad, President at Mandala Group and board member of the BCCC, as well as chair of our Trade Investment Committee, to present on market entry requirements, what you need to know. So Paula, if you are, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, bonjour, boa tarde. Muito obrigada. Thank you very much for being here today. I guess most of the people that are going to be here, they're looking to enter Canada or looking into going out of the country. So I'm going to have just a quick presentation and really talking about sort of my experience being here in Canada. I've been with the Chamber since 94. How many years is that? I moved to Canada in 1990. I did my undergrad and some of my postgraduate here. And in 2000, I launched my company. Mandala Group. Let me see if we can do this. Okay. So in 2000, I launched the Mandala Group. It was initially an events and PR company. And in 2008, we sort of pivoted to do something called business matchmaking. And so we've been around for 22 years. So we do mostly trade missions. The matchmaking, for those of you who don't know what it is C-level B2B meetings. And we also do international events. We work globally, but our specialty really is anything in and out of Brazil or in and out of Canada. We have worked with well over 100 trade missions, over 800 companies, well over now. This is a couple of years old, actually. When I look at the number of events, and 22 years in business, and we have repeat clients all the time. So we must be doing something right in those years. And this is some of our clients, just for you to have an idea of what we do and the reach that we have. So choose Canada. So why choose Canada? So Elise talked about it a little bit, and Marcelo did as well. I worked with investment attraction. Marcelo is in the federal level. I worked with municipalities and I worked with provinces in investment attraction for a long time. And I just want to stress some of the points that were already touched upon. The access to other international markets, using Canada as a launch pad once we established here, to go, using our 5, free trade agreements to go internationally. And as Marcela mentioned, the government will give you full support in doing that. And not only, with giving you the tools, but also some of the programs and grants that they give. Like there's a program that I'm on the board of another other companies as well. And we just, we applied for tax credits, we applied for IRAP, like going out of the country and having some of the money that we spent going out of the country coming back to us. We have to have all the support documents and everything. So that is a great thing that we have here. We have really low corporate taxes, only 15%. I don't think you can compare the bureaucracy of anything from opening a company or a corporation in Canada and the cost to the bureaucracy that you unfortunately see in Brazil, even though things are getting much simpler in that stand. Having a stable economy. One of the things that I love about Canada is the immigrant culture that we have here. And basically, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you come in and you have a good proposal and you have a good business, people will invest in you and they will want to have business with you. And coming from a country like Canada, getting out of sort of exporting your product or service from the launch pad of Canada to other countries, give you a credibility that is very hard to get. And that was built over the years in having a stable economy, in having a government that supports companies, is building this credibility that we have today. As Marcelo mentioned, we have a thriving ecosystem for startups and to support entrepreneurs. And basically, you do more with less. When I was in Brazil doing investment attraction, so literally bringing startups to Canada, and also companies to Canada, you really do more with less. If you compare the cost of going, for example, for a tech startup to Silicon Valley and to Canada, you can't compare. Like we have an amazing pool of talent here. Also, we have the cost of living is much less, the cost of doing business is much less, and you can just be as effective. We have, and one thing that Marcel didn't talk about is the VC and the angel investor culture that we have that really started after Shopify became a unicorn, that really sort of went up, a few more steps. And some people say, but the funds that you can access in Silicon Valley in the US are much more than you can access in Canada. It is true. But also the investors from Silicon Valley are looking to Canada to get those companies to invest on, and because they know they're building unicorns. And I think Brazil is actually coming out with it. We have so many unicorns, over $1 billion companies that come out of Brazil, that it doesn't really matter if you go to Silicon Valley, you're going to get the attention here, and you're not competing so much for the talent. And I guess if you compare maybe what we had in 2018 to 2022 now, a lot of people they're looking at quality of life. So they have moved. I know that, for example, the Ryerson DMZ, which is an incubator for Rice University, they have an Insfeld, it's a little town near here, close to what we call the lakes. They have an incubator there, and I visited their incubator in Mumbai, for example, in India. They have it all over the world. Why go there? Because of quality of life. And a lot of talent decided, okay, I want quality of life for myself. I want to work close to home. So I will, I'll be part of this, and it's talent that is available. So you decided to come to Canada, and now what? What steps do you go from here? Let me just close this. Oh my God, sorry. Wrong one. Okay, I'll look here, 1 second. Too many windows open. So I think first thing we have to look at, some people come here and you ask them why you're moving to Canada, and they say, well, I'm moving to Canada because, I want to get the visa for Canada and I want to live in Canada. This is not, for you to come as a startup, that's not the best reason to be here. I think having a good fit, is the major thing. Of course, you're looking to have the quality of life, if you have kids, to have in a good school. And but you also have to make sure that it is a good fit. And for that, it takes a lot of research. Okay, so one of the things that you have to do is to know is that, as just like Brazil is not Sao Paulo, Canada is not Toronto, and there are many other provinces there are offering programs for entrepreneurs, for startups, for the PR and the visa that might be a better fit for your company and for your family as well. So looking at that, I think it's very, very important, and understanding that it's more than Ontario, it's more than BC, British Columbia, it's more than Quebec. Canada it's a huge country. Yes, it's going to get colder as you go north. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to be California when you go in the weather, but that's definitely going to be a great experience. I love Canada, so for me it's really hard to even try to compare Canada to the US, because what we have here in terms of health, in terms of the schools, in terms of support, in terms of the values of the Canadian people, and as Marcelo and Elise mentioned, how much the government supports you, and you really feel that support. So I think the other thing that I want to talk about, and I talk about to many of the companies that I take abroad, is the exploring part. So I do a lot of what they call exploratory missions, taking Canadian companies abroad to do those 6 to 8 initial meetings to know if the other country is a fit. So to do the exploring, you need to be prepared even to go ahead. So do you have a roadmap for your business? Who are you going to talk to? You're going to talk to lawyers, you're going to talk to accountants, you're going to talk to potential partners, you're going to talk to potential customers. If you're setting up a physical place of business, you have to look at what it takes for you to rent a place, and have a real estate person, a commercial real estate person, to help you with that. Sometimes it can take forever to look and find a place that within a budget, especially in big cities, especially when you come to, like, I'm going to say Vancouver or Toronto, because real estate here is very expensive, but it's not impossible. Sometimes it takes time, but you need that. So having those meetings, being ready for those meetings, I don't think I can't stress enough how important it is for being ready for those meetings. Many times I do trade missions where the delegates are not prepared to go on that trade mission. They don't have their presentation in Portuguese. They don't know what the products that they have, they're going to be more successful in that country. Let's say Brazil, let's say they're selling, at the time Petrobras was the big buyer. Going to Petrobras, you have a catalog of like 10 items that you can sell to Petrobras. Come in with one or two, for example. Don't come in with your 10 products. And then you'll be introducing your best sellers, the ones that you know it's going to work, and introduce them. So having a strategy in coming in, having a strategy and even talking to these companies is extremely, extremely, extremely important. And understanding, each person that you're going to talk to and how they're going to see your business. And talking to banks and saying, my business is going to need a line of credit? Do I need a credit card? How much can I get? Do I have enough, basically funds to support my business for the next 1 or 2 years and support my family the next 1 or 2 years? And it really is better to over project than under project, that, fail because of something that, was not that point that was not well planned. I had a sort of like I get a good example because they actually succeeded of this company that came here, and when they came here, they had no idea what they're doing, and they did the right thing. One of the main things is hiring a local person who understands your business, who understands your culture, and can lead you from there, even making the right contacts. Even they're not going to do everything for you, but they hire a local company who is Canadian, did not understand how Brazilians do business. And on, to be fair, the Brazilians didn't understand how the Canadian did business either. So the lack of business culture really hurt them and led to the company almost not opening here. And because they had investors, they were backing them. They're not even coming alone. They had big investors backing them that they had to report to, which put them in an even more awkward position. We did everything right. What was wrong? The wrong thing is the business culture, and understanding having someone who understands your business culture, the local business culture, and understands where you want to go. And they can tell you how far they can go with you. For example, we did all the market research, for example, for Catupiry coming into Canada. And at some point we offered them, okay, these are the people that we think you should maybe be dealing with. And, this is how the market works. This is how all the tariffs work and importing the product. And then they chose someone who was not, let's say, a countrywide person, but he was very interested. But it was not their main focus of business. It was not what we had sort of given them as a consultant. It's not, we don't really think you should do that. But we can say that. We can say, okay, these are the companies that we support that because we have done the background on them. So that can lead to fail or not of market entrance, especially in a country where dairy industry is so protected. So dairy and wood are extremely protected in Canada. So not a lot is protected here, but these are two main things that are really protected. So it's very complicated, and you have to have a beautiful strategy, almost like a song, it's like poetry, how to get in, respecting the local bylaws and the quotas, and also being able to achieve those markets. To this day, this is a couple of years ago, I'll say 3 years ago, I have people, sending me messages asking me where to buy Catupiry here. So having that approach is very important. So I cannot, in this exploration part where you really finding out where to go, when to go, what do you need, is really preparing the roadmap. And the next step that I like to, see, if you decide to come to Canada, so what do? You prepare. So prepare is having a business plan. And people, I don't need a business plan. Oh, yes, you need a business plan. You might not fill out everything. You want to do it the way you do, but at least if you're going to go to a bank, you need a business plan. If you're going to have local partners, you need a business plan. If you want to look serious, you have a business plan. And if you need to work with other people, you need a business plan. And sometimes in the business plan, when you do it, and I can even talk from my own business, you realize that certain things that are there that you haven't even touched upon are very important. And I'm just looking at lack of preparation is one of the biggest points where people fail in opening a new business. And there's nothing that makes me more sad than seeing someone come in with so much energy and passion, and then they did not know how to import, their product. The product gets stopped. I think Arno Mello will talk about that later in way more detail. And they lose all their savings doing that, and they had everything else. So every little detail does matter. So having a local person does matter. When it comes to sales and operations, I'm actually making a little list here that I think it might be useful for whoever's thinking about coming to Canada. And one of the things that I see a lot in business they're starting, they concentrate so much in the operations and setting up the business, they forget about the sales part. So don't ever leave the sales part out. Some of the operation administrative stuff, you can do it. You can give to, you can outsource, and some other things you can't outsource. But the sales is something you need to pay attention. Hiring the right staff. I personally had a very bad experience in hiring the wrong staff. It was terrible. It was heartbreaking. Somebody they're dependent on, and hiring staff in Canada is extremely expensive. Labor is extremely expensive. So this is something that has to be very careful, well thought of, and really having the right people there with the language skills, whatever you need. Sometimes is not the one that has the local person, but the local person, being the Brazilian or Canadian or Indian or whatever the background is, that can help you with that. Also, for big sales, local partnerships is very important. So let's say, let's say Costco or a big company, KPMG, that have suppliers, or RBC, the Bank of Canada. If you piggyback on with those suppliers and they're already selling, and you sell with them your product, it's a great way in and a great way to establish credibility. And network. It's, I think everyone is tired of hearing that, but it's a big deal, especially now that we're going back to networking and people know your face. The great thing that happened during this pandemic is that even being in Brazil, now it's okay to network over, online, like we're doing right now. It's okay to do that. It's not the same, hopefully go back in person, but taking that opportunity to network and understand and talk, to even do your exploratory preparation. I just did a trade mission where it was my first my virtual trade mission. And well, it was not easy, but I know for a fact that a lot of the companies that were in that trade mission that I did for the Canadian Consulate in Sao Paulo are already in conversation to do business in Brazil. And the very last point is, I had a couple of companies that I worked with where they really did amazing, and then they really had a fast growth. And one of them actually ended up folding because they did not manage their fast growth properly, which is, again, super sad to see. It happened. They just had to close down the first and second operation because the second operation was sort of, I think, banking on the first one. Basically the management and the strategy for the fast growth was not looked at properly, because you're just so desperate to fill orders and to say yes that you do that. I think that's it for now for me. I think I'm within my 15-20 minutes, Carolina. So I'm here if you have any questions, let me know. I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience and the experience of companies I work with in terms of what succeeded and what failed, and I hope it helped you.
Thank you, Paula. That was very insightful. I think that one of the main points that I also like to highlight based on your presentation is the networking part. I think that Canada is a country the same as Brazil, very similar in that sense that you need to know people. Cold calls don't work really very much, right? So you need to get a recommendation, you need to know people, you need to be connected with the business community here. And I think that's one of the things that we would like to highlight as well, how important it is for you to start networking even before you came to Canada. So through LinkedIn or through other connections, but start building your network even before you arrive here, so you have a support base when you are ready to incorporate and to start your company here in Canada. So
for you and your
Yeah.
family. And the associations, not only like the BCCC, but there are other associations. BCCC, probably for if you're moving here and you open your company here, probably be one of the best, really, because I've been with, long enough as a member to know. But there are other associations too. And even if you're coming with your family, I didn't talk about the mental health aspect of being entrepreneur, but I think it's the other thing that should be looked at when moving here. Thank you, Carolina.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all your insights and sharing your knowledge with us. So next, I would like to introduce now Tassiana Gossler, associate at Oziel Law, to talk about the legal aspects of doing business in Canada. Oziel Law is a boutique corporate law firm who has worked with many Brazilian companies supporting their incorporation, their needs here in Canada. Tassiane is a double bar, so she is part of the Brazilian bar and the Canadian bar, so she's well positioned to really talk about the differences and the comparison. I'm excited to see your presentation. Tassi, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Olá, todo mundo. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I have a quick presentation that I would like to share with you just to guide our discussion. So we're going to be talking mainly about the legal aspects of doing business in Canada. There's no way we can cover that in 15 minutes. And I also think it's not necessary for the founders to know all the details that go in through the legal aspects of incorporating the business here, entering into contracts, raising capital, but there are some basic fundamentals that you, as a founder, as the entrepreneur that is actually expanding your business here, or even starting a new business in Canada, are some very important points for you to keep in mind. And if you are at the planning stage, some things for you to start at least thinking about in your journey to expand here to Canada. So the first thing, not to bore you too much because we had so many interesting topics, and I don't want to come with a lawyer and just give legal information, but I think it's important for you to know that here in Canada, we have two legal systems. So we have common law that comes from English law, or civil law, which is much more similar with what we do in Brazil. Civil law, you're going to find that only in the province of Quebec. It's a different province in terms of a lot of the discussions that we're going to have here today. I'm a lawyer in Ontario. So what I'm going to talk about relates in general to doing business in Canada as a whole. But when we talk about common law, it's mainly to all the other provinces in Canada, including Ontario, except for Quebec. So when we talk about having different legal systems here, what you need to keep in mind is that mainly we're going to have a different source of law and a difference in the role of the judges. So in Brazil, we're very used to having legislation, to having codes. We have Código Civil, we have CLT, the legislation for employment, which probably a lot of you have heard a lot of it, working in Brazil, hiring people in Brazil. In Canada, we are going to have legislation too, even in the common law provinces. But at the same time, the legislation is not as comprehensive as it is in Brazil. And the judges, they will have a more expanded role in interpreting the legislation that is available. So when you come to do business in Canada, how that is going to affect you mainly, probably when you're contracting with employees, with suppliers, with clients. So you're going to have to keep in mind that you don't have a legislation as comprehensive as you have in Brazil. So your contract, the agreement that you're entering with other parties, will have to take into account any details that in Brazil you may be used to having that only in the legislation. So there's a lot of contract freedom here. I know that when we come from Brazil, and just being a lawyer in Brazil, we have the mentality that there are some things that you can't really contract. You just have to follow the contract template that you had been using, because that is coming from the civil code, for example. But in Canada, you have to shift the mentality that whatever is not forbidden by law, it's probably something that you can contract with the other party. So there's a lot of emphasis in the negotiation of the contract. As this is very different from what I used to see in Brazil. So in Brazil, it gets to a point that the parties, it's a lot of what we're going to talk about here today, it also refers to culture, right? So it's not only the legal system, but culturally, as Brazilians, we may not negotiate that much the contract because we're afraid of losing the relationship with the client. And in the back of our minds, we think that if there's an issue, like a controversy with that agreement, we know that we can go to court or we can have a dispute later on if something happens. But here, you really shift that mentality to focus on the negotiation before you sign the agreement so that you have less ambiguities in the contract. Because here, if the contract is very clear about the obligations of the parties, it is very difficult that this will generate a dispute, that this will go to court. The access to justice is different here. So it's not very common for the minor dispute that you have with your client, for example, that you would go to court over a contract. Those issues, they usually come up when you have ambiguities, when you have something in the contract that is not 100% clear, and then that generates discussion. So probably just the tip that I would give from this slide and what you need to know is that it's probably not enough for you to just translate the contracts that you have in Brazil when you're doing business in Canada. The different legal systems, so you would need the advice from a Canadian lawyer to help you to navigate those differences, and that you should pay attention to the negotiation, invest time in that to find the better contract with your client, with your employee, for example, supplier, whoever you're entering into an agreement with. And then the other thing to pay attention to is that here we have different provinces. So each of them is going to legislate about certain areas, and we have federal legislation too about more national matters. So depending on the area that you operate, you may want to look at the legislation applicable to the province where you're planning to establish your business. We have some areas here that are regulated. So if you're dealing with e-commerce, we have anti-spam legislation. If you have a software or a business that collects personal information, we have strong privacy laws too. So those are some of the things to start looking into and keeping them in mind. And then when you're more familiar, let's say, with the legal landscape here in Canada, and you're thinking about actually expanding your business here, or if you are not necessarily expanding an existing business, but just creating a new business in Canada, you're generally going to look into those three options. So you can have a Canadian branch. So it's basically an extension of the business that you have in Brazil. So you're not creating a new entity here in Canada, but you would just establish a branch. And that is done by an extra provincial registration in the province where you're doing business in. So it's more like an authorization for you to do business in Canada under your name, but you're not creating a new entity. Your entity is not going to be resident in Canada. It's still based on the Brazilian corporation that you have. Another option that is usually more common for an expansion of the business is actually incorporating a subsidiary here in Canada, which is a new Canadian entity that is controlled by your Brazilian company. That option has some benefits in terms of allowing you to participate in some incentive programs here in Canada that are only available for Canadian companies. If you want to hire people under the Canadian company and not under the Brazilian company, that works with the subsidiary as well. Some immigration programs, I think Sonia is going to talk about them. They require that you actually establish a Canadian entity. So that is one of the usual options for you to expand your business, and the structure of that subsidiary can vary. So that's when you can play as to who are going to be the shareholders, who is going to control that subsidiary. And here you have some margin to plan depending on your goals. So you can plan according to the immigration goals you have, or if there's any tax planning that you would like to include here, there may be some opportunities for that. And then for those of you who are just opening a brand new business in Canada, you would also create a new corporation here in Canada. The most common structure that we have here is the corporation. There are some other structures available. For example, in British Columbia, you have unlimited liability companies. You have partnerships as well, but the most common form you're going to see is the corporation. In Brazil, I know where a lot of the clients that I work with, they are more used to the structure of limitada, but the corporation is more similar to a sociedade anônima. But as Paula was explaining before, less bureaucracy for you to create that structure as it would be for a sociedade anônima in Brazil. But when you think about the corporation, you just have to keep in mind that it will come with all that structure. So you have the shareholders, which are the owners of this company, the people that hold the shares of the business. The shareholders, they're going to elect a board of directors that will take care of the management of the company. And then the directors, they can elect officers like a president, a CEO, to take care of the day-to-day operations of the business. And it may sound a lot, but it's very standard the way this works here in Canada. So I thought I would bring that up just so you can start to be more familiar with those terms. And it's very common for early stage companies or startups that all of those roles are performed by the same person. So you could have one person who is the sole shareholder, they elect themselves as a director, they appoint themselves as the president, secretary of the company, and that's all fine. But in either case, it is a legal requirement that you go through the steps and have like all those positions occupied in the company. So then just some other considerations for you to incorporate, mainly things for you to start thinking about. The first one is where you're incorporating, and that is really related to the previous speakers in terms of where you actually plan to do business in. In Canada, you can establish a company under the provincial legislation of one of the provinces or under the federal legislation. So you would look into the province that you're planning to really operate and do business in. And you would look at the residency requirements for directors, because some provinces and also the federal laws, they have a requirement that a certain number of your board of directors is resident Canadian. So again, this is not relating to the owners of the company, the shareholders, they don't have any residency requirements, but the directors, the people that will compose the board, some legislations have that requirement. But if you're planning to incorporate, for example, in Ontario, which is where Toronto is, we have a lot of accelerators, incubators happening here in Ontario, but in other provinces too. But if it is Ontario, if it is British Columbia, for example, those are provinces that don't have any requirement in terms of the residency of the directors. So this is one point for you to consider too. And if let's say you incorporate your business in Ontario because initially you were going to have your operations here, but later on you decide to expand to another province and you open an office somewhere else, you start to hire people from other places, that's not an issue, and you deal with that by just adding extra provincial registrations in the other provinces that you're operating. So that's something very common too. Another question that I usually get is about the initial investment that you have to make into the company. So there's no requirement of a minimum amount that you have to invest, but you have to pay for the shares that you're buying in the company. So remember, I was talking about the structure and you have the shareholders. So the shareholders, they have to buy their shares, but that could be for a nominal amount. So if we're thinking about a structure that we have the parent Brazilian company as the controlling entity of the Canadian company that it will incorporate, it could be that this Brazilian company is buying shares of the Canadian company, and that could be a price per share of 0.001. and that's fine. So there's not a requirement for that minimal investment. And I didn't put it here, but I usually get a question about having a physical operation here in Canada, especially because of COVID, when some companies were expanding but couldn't necessarily come here in person. So in those cases, you can actually hire a virtual office provider, for example. You just need to have an address in the province that you're planning to operate. And it has to be an address that is not a PO box, but you don't have to have physical operations there. So I have clients that will hire a virtual office that will receive mail on their behalf, and that is sufficient for the incorporation purposes. And then the other thing to think about at this point is the intellectual property of the company. So if your business is based on IP, for example, a software that you developed, an app, it's important for you to make sure that the Canadian company that you're establishing actually owns the IP, or if you want the IP to remain with the Brazilian company, at least that the Canadian company has the license and the rights to use that IP and to sell that IP to others or license to others. So there's just some planning that you're going to have to do with the IP just to make sure that it sits with the Canadian company as well. And this is also applicable to people that are creating a new business in Canada. Like, even if you're not expanding, sometimes it happens that you worked under your name for a few years and you have developed some IP under your name, and then later on you decide to incorporate the company. There may be instances that you have to make sure that you have transferred the intellectual property, the software, the code, from your name to the actual company, so that it doesn't sit with the individuals or the founders, but really with the entity. This is going to be important for seeking financing in Canada, any due diligence that an investor is going to do on you. For some immigration programs, I understand that that's required for you to show that the company also has IP. Then one other thing that I wanted to bring out to you is the organization of the company, because we go through this webinars and we usually talk a lot about how easy it is to incorporate in Canada. And some people take that advice to the extreme and just go online, because you can actually incorporate your business online, and they create the company, they receive the certificate of incorporation, and they're fine with that. But this is just the first step in the creation of the company, because when you incorporate online, you're only going to have a number for the company and something that says that it exists. But the second step is for you to organize the company internally. So you have to have the documents that elect who are the directors of this company, and then the directors will issue the shares to the shareholders. And then you're going to approve the bylaws. So there are a few documents that you still need to prepare internally after that company is incorporated. I don't need to tell you all the details, but it's just good for you to keep that in mind, because sometimes you're trying to save the cost and expedite the process by doing the incorporation online. But if you miss those steps and later on you have to present your documents to the tax agency here, you're not going to have anything that even shows who is the owner of this company. So all of that is done through the creation of what we call a minute book, or the organization of the company. So just keep in mind that that is actually a further step that is required when you're creating the business here. But it is very simple. It doesn't mean that it's going to be very complicated. In terms of the timeline, it doesn't take too long. A lot of the processes can be done online with electronic signatures. You don't have to notarize the documents. So it's still a very easy process to do, but you just have to pay attention to actually doing it and thinking about the right structure that you want for the company. So then you have created your company, you have organized the company. Maybe the next step to raise capital. Paolo was talking about VCs, angels in Canada. You can take advantage of those investors. And in terms of structuring the capital raise of the company, while you're still a private company, so we're not talking about going public at this stage, it could be something that you can plan for later on. But initially, while you're a private company, you can have, I'm just gonna put some keywords here so you can start being more familiar with them, and then we can definitely chat more about them. But if you're uncertain of the valuation of your business at this point, there are instruments to raise money that they basically consist of a promise that you're giving to the investor that at one point you will issue them shares in exchange for them to invest in your company. Or if you're more settled on the valuation of the business, you can have a price round where there's usually more negotiation of the parties. There's due diligence that the investor is going to do to make sure the valuation is correct. So it's not a rule, it can change, but usually the standard is for you to start with convertible securities, and then you can go for a price round with a more sophisticated investor too. And then another point, just always make sure that you have the advice to comply with the securities laws in Canada, because you're going to be still a private company, so you cannot access all investors. Whoever is investing in your company needs to have either a relationship with the founders, with the company itself, or it has to be an accredited investor, someone that has a certain income that it is presumed that they actually have the sophistication to deal with that investment. In terms of immigration, I know that Sonia will talk about that really soon, but then the other point that I wanted to talk about is after raising capital, or even before that, it could be the time to hire employees, hiring contractors. And this relates to the first topic that I was talking about, the different legal system. And the main lesson is the importance of having a formal agreement in writing with the employees, with the contractors, explaining the relationship, the rights of the parties. Even for employees, even though we have legislation in Ontario, for example, with the minimums, if you don't have an agreement that says that you actually want to give the minimums to that employee, it's going to be up to the interpretation of a judge, whatever you actually agree with that person. So in that sense, it's different from Brazil. And it's very important that you keep in mind that you need to go through those details with whoever you're contracting with and putting that in paper. And then the final point, because I saw we have some tech companies here, and it also relates to the first point I was talking about, not merely translating the contracts or terms that you already have in Brazil to Canada, but making sure that you have a privacy policy that complies with Canadian privacy laws. If you license your IP to other parties, and that's the main business that you do, make sure you have a license agreement in place. If you have an app, make sure that you have terms of use with appropriate disclaimers of what is it that you're doing, what you're not doing, and take advantage of all the freedom to contract and how enforceable the contracts are here in Canada too. So I think this was it from my end. It was really fast, but I'm here available for any further questions that you have or some points that you would like to discuss.
Thank you, Tassi. It was also very informative. I think that you touched all the main points to consider. Again, the idea is really to give an introduction on all the important points to consider when looking into incorporating in Canada. So next, she's already here, so I'd like to invite Sonia Mirbaja. She is the partner and founder of Mirbaja Shashnal LLP, a boutique immigration firm based in Toronto, focused on global mobility. So thank you so much, Sonia, for being here, and over to you.
Thank you, Carolina. It's a pleasure to be part of this event, really. It's you guys are talking about all the good stuff, everything that a company really needs to know. before making a plan to come here. Just a brief introduction on top of what Carolina mentioned. We are a boutique law firm out of Toronto. I am a principal partner of the firm. We're dealing with immigration matters, majorly working with tech companies coming to Canada from all across the world. A lot of Brazilian companies are coming to Canada, so many Brazilian clients, and a startup level, and medium-sized companies or even large international companies. Back to, the whole argument, not an argument, but presentation that Tessiane had about how to incorporate a company in Canada, which she beautifully managed to put in a very short period of time. We come as immigration experts. We usually come at the very last end of this whole process. Carolina, may I ask you to share my presentation if you have it handy, or I can do it?
I can get it here. It's very quick while you continue your points.
Okay. So so we're coming at the very end of the spectrum. So once the idea is generated for the company, the business plan is prepared, all the connections with the business corporate lawyer Tessiane is made, companies incorporated in Canada. Now, what do we do to transfer our skilled workers or top managers or critical people to Canada? And that's when we come into the picture. So there are multiple programs that we could look into. As Tessiane mentioned, I can talk to you guys for days and days about immigration programs. There are about 80-something immigration programs, really. Oh, you got it there. Perfect.
Just put it on full screen. Just give me 1 second here.
Sure. There are so many immigration programs that are designed for different categories and different routes and different people. There are some that are work permit related, and we're mainly focusing on those programs because I think those are the most appropriate ones for companies that are just opening up a shop in Canada. And if Carolina can scroll down on the second slide, I think we'll go through the programs that are designed for people that are coming from outside of Canada. The business programs that we're looking at today for the sake of this event, and I'd be happy to talk about it more with any of you guys that are interested. But like I said, we've got a very limited time here, and we've got so much information to give about each program. So I'm just going to briefly touch upon each program, and I'd be happy to discuss that in more details later. The intercompany transfer, the labor market impact assessment, Lmia, startup visa for tech companies mainly, and the alternative programs, which are mainly the PR programs. And I just threw it in there. It's not really related to, it's not what I'm meant to say is that it's not a really fast program to bring people to Canada immediately to work on the business, but it's also something to be considered in the long run, which I'll just touch upon that, but I just threw in there for the sake of information. So if we can go through the next slide, Carolina. So the ICT or intercompany transfer is really mainly designed for international companies at the very, very beginning, and goes back to 1970s or maybe 80s. I would say maybe even older, for international companies that are, bringing or transferring their skilled people or executives or managers from one entity to another entity, another country, in this case, Canada. Now, further on, as years pass by, this program kind of got developed and kind of got applied to more of a smaller companies as well. What it means is that if a company is outside of Canada and is establishing an entity, legal entity in Canada through Tessiane, through the incorporation, and once all those initial chats and talks and all the legal documents are prepared and the entity is created, now we have to show how this entity in Canada is linked to the entity in Brazil. And once that link is fully established, then we're bringing somebody who's been working in Brazil, who's believed to be a skilled person and a critical person and a key person to run the business in Brazil, to Canada. Now, there are some eligibility requirements. Obviously, we need to, as I said, we need to establish this relationship between the parent company and the subsidiary company. We need to prove that this applicant is either skilled worker or, like I said, top managerial role. And the proof obviously is the years of experience in the parent company in Brazil, the education, work experience in other companies, and all sorts of stuff that goes in it. I just don't want to make things more complicated here, but here, basically proving, the experience of the person. And also this applicant must have had at least 1 year work experience with the parent company in Brazil. So essentially you can't just transfer somebody you just hired in Brazil to Canada through this program. Now, there are other programs that, might be able to facilitate that, but under ICT won't be able to do that simply because the program is designed for people that are having an internal knowledge of the company more so than being skilled or more so than being just a manager. So apologies for the background mayhem. I'm right beside the fire station. Sometimes this happens. So this is just happening right now. Fantastic. Anyways, so there might be additional documents required for this process. I do for ICT cases, intercorporate transfer cases. I like to work very closely with the corporate lawyer that incorporated, the company in Canada. I've worked with Tessian before, and or any other lawyer that works on the legal side of setting up a company in Canada, because there are certain requirements that we would have to look into depending on what the case is. So a lot of times I might have to ask for a comprehensive business plan for the company in Canada, again, depending on the size of the company, depending on the nature of the company. Many times we would have to look into a shareholder agreement to, sort of determine who are the shareholders, who are the directors, how's the structure of the company in Canada. And also if the company, as Tessian alluded to, if the company is registered extra provincially, what is the company really doing? And all those extra provincial registrations are also coming into the picture when we're filing for the immigration application. In terms of the application processing and timing, I really don't want to comment on the processing, to be honest, because processing times have been extended tremendously lately. Well, COVID, as you all know, has had its own backlogs on immigration, and then we hit this Ukraine Russia war, and Canada jumped in for helping Ukrainians fleeing the war. And so a lot of resources are allocated for helping Ukrainians, and therefore there's not much attention to the other programs of immigration. So when it comes to processing time, I like to stay silent and hope for the best, but it really is depending on which country people are coming from. In the case of Brazilians, the good thing is that they don't require visa to enter Canada. So what that means is that they can really, as soon as all the immigration package and everything is ready, they could really fly to Canada and apply for work permit at the port of entry. So this will sort of facilitate their entry in a faster way, whereas people that are coming from countries that require visa to come to Canada, they're not really allowed or permitted to do that. So this is a good thing for Brazilians. But if a person is coming from any other part of the world, then we have to look into the country and the requirements of entering from that country to Canada. And then based on that, the processing times are sort of identified. As I said at the very beginning, this program leads to work permit. Work permit is a temporary residency of Canada. It's not permanent residency. And so once the person lands in Canada and gets the work permit, then the next step would be looking into converting this work permit to PR. So what are the ways available? Again, there are so many programs on PR side, and it's very much case basis, and we would have to look into what's the situation of that person, how many dependent family members in a unit, what's the career, what's the educational background, how's the language efficiency and all that. And then based on that, we'll pick a suitable PR program. So the next step is LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment, Carolina. That's the next slide. And so that is designed for people that are typically not qualified for ICT. So like I said at the beginning, if you remember, if somebody just gets hired by the Brazilian company overseas, obviously that person can't be transferred through the ICT program. There is a requirement of at least 1 year of work experience. So if the person does not meet that requirement, one of the ways that he or she can come to Canada and work for the Canadian company is through LMIA. That's a short form of Labor Market Impact Assessment, and that's the application and a document that's being processed or assessed by Service Canada prior to filing the immigration application. We've got different streams of LMIA. We've got Global Town Stream that's purely designed for tech workers. The whole essence of the program is that it has to be done in a very quick, fast pace. And to Service Canada's credit, they've been really on top of that throughout the pandemic, or even now. The whole process gets done within 2 weeks, usually, very fast. And once the LMIA is approved, which essentially is approving the employer's credentials and employer's situation to hire a foreign worker, then we would go to Immigration Canada and file the work permit application. There are category A's and B's. Sorry, category A is usually designed for all those unique ideas. The company that has a super unique idea and is supported by incubator or any other designated entity in Canada. Quite rare, to be honest with you. Majority of the applications are being filed under category B, and those are the companies that are hiring for tech talents. And the list goes on, the developers, the engineers, the analysts, the architects, all those people all are falling under category B. The fee for processing the LMIA application for the employer is $1,000, so it's not really cheap. And the processing time, like you said, is super fast. If somebody is not under the tech title, I would say, then they would fall under high wage stream. That's another stream of LMIA. So high wage kind of covers all the other positions, all the other categories. I would say somebody who's coming to work in a restaurant, or somebody who's coming to work in a retail shop, or any other non-tech related position. Now, high wage stream is taking a longer period of time, obviously, for the applications to be processed. It's not really a top priority for the Canadian government. So in terms of processing times, we're looking at somewhere around 4 to 5 months, maybe, only for the LMIA. And then the work permit part is obviously added on top of the entire processing time. Both categories, both streams obviously lead again into obtaining the work permit for the applicant, which is again a temporary residency of Canada. The only difference between LMIA and ICT that I was talking about earlier is that LMIA, obviously, it's a two-phase kind of program. We deal with Service Canada on the first phase, and then we move to Immigration Canada in the second phase. So in terms of processing time, you're looking at a slightly longer processing time. The third type, Carolina, which gets us to the third slide. Yes, that's it. The Strata visa program, everybody knows about it. I mean, there are lots of hype about this program. It's kind of sad in my heart to say that it's not the most efficient program, although it was designed to be initially, but it turned out to be a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of long processing times, which kind of disappointed all the people in the tech world, but it still exists in a lot of companies, tech companies from outside of Canada using the program to apply for PR and then get the benefit and advantage of getting the work permit through that application. So what I mean by that is that if a tech company is qualified and if the company is backed up by what we call it a designated entity in Canada, which are essentially incubators or venture capitalists or angel investors that are investing in a company or the company's idea in Canada, the company is backed up by that organization, then the company is essentially getting a piece of paper, a couple of pages, that's called a commitment certificate or letter of support. And sorry, I got distracted for a second. So once that letter of support is available, then the company can founder and all the co-founders of the company can essentially apply for a PR. Now, the reason that I'm saying that it's quite inefficient is that, you know, it was supposed to be initially when the program got introduced by the Canadian government, it was supposed to be done within 6 months. Then it got expanded to 12 months. Then we got hit by COVID pandemic, and all of a sudden the processing times are 18 months to 2 years. Which, you know, or whoever else is here familiar with the tech world, you know, 2 years, what it means for tech companies or a techie person in general. That's like Milky Way from, you know, away from now. But, you know, in order to compensate that, what the Canadian government does is that it allows the applicants to apply for a work permit. So once the person applies, then they can, you know, sends the PR application, then they can apply for a work permit, and essentially that work permit application gets processed a lot faster. And the person can come to Canada, start working in a company, start generating business, start networking, whatever that needs to be done until the PR application gets processed. Again, for the startup, for the initial phase of startup program, the company has to be registered in Canada. There are some cases where the company could not be registered, which I would really not advise going through that route. If anybody has any comment or any questions, I can address that a little later. But generally speaking, 9 out of 10 of the cases, the company has to be registered in Canada, which Tessiane, again, is her expertise. And we would look into the share structure. We would have to see how many percentage of shares are allocating to each co-founder, and then based on that, we would file the immigration application. The next slide, which is the last slide, that's the alternative programs that I was talking about, the PMP program and the Express Entry. These are all PR programs. PMPs scattered all across the board. Every province has a PMP program. They're designed for entrepreneurs. They're designed for individuals with skilled knowledge and expertise. And, you know, I can't really give you any exact idea because, for example, in Ontario alone, there are 8 to 10 programs. In BC, there's another 8 to 10 program. And, you know, you just do the math, multiply by the number of provinces, and there are just a lot of PMP programs. So really what I do on a case-by-case basis, I would look into the situation, details of the case, and then determine, and obviously the goal of the applicants as well. Somebody wants to come to Canada next week, but another person might, you know, have a longer plan and want to come to Canada, you know, in a year or so. Then that kind of gives me a hint of which program I'm leaning to, if it's a PR program, if it's a work permit program, temporary residency, or whatever that is. But all in all, what I'm trying to say is that there's so many PMP programs available, which we kind of have to tailor make it to the situation of the applicant, and we'll discuss that on a case-by-case basis. The Express Entry program has been so dormant, so silent for many months, as you probably all of you know. We've got promises by the new Minister of Immigration for the program to come back to life somewhere towards mid-2022, which is essentially probably a month or two from now. There are no certain dates for now available, but we're all hoping that, you know, sometime towards mid to end of 2022, it kind of resumes the draws again. It's a fantastic program. It's just because of the backlogs and all that stuff that immigration has been experiencing, it's been put on a temporary hold for now. With that, I conclude my presentation. The last slide is, you know, my information is right there, phone number, email address, all that stuff that you need to know in order to contact me. If there are any questions after this event, I'd be very happy to answer that. Back to you, Carolina.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for the presentation. Again, I think it's very important to highlight that immigration is on a case-to-case basis, right? So it depends on the objectives and the characteristics of each applicant, each company. But I think this gave us a big broad highlight of what's available and what are the possibilities. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your presentation. So finally, and again, I'd just like to encourage everyone, don't forget to add your questions or any questions you might have to any of the panelists in the Q&A box. Take this opportunity to consult with the experts here today. There's no wrong questions, so don't be shy, and any questions that you might have, please add on the Q&A box and we will come back to them after the last presentation that we have here today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Arnaud Mello, President at Mello Hawk Logistics, who will present the main points to consider when exporting your products to Canada. So Mello Hawk Logistics, international freight forwarder and a specialist in worldwide transportation and logistics. So Arnaud, thanks for being here, and over to you.
Hello, Carol, how are you? How is everybody today? My God, so many presentations. Thank you so much for having me. Anyway, welcome everyone. Boa tarde, prazer estar aqui com todos. I'm gonna share my screen. So we are, Mello Hawk Logistics is a logistics company. And what's a logistics company? Is a company that moves cargo around the world. I am Brazilian, so Brazil and South America are a niche market for us. And we do everything related to logistics. So we move cargo by air, ocean, trucking. We do customs clearances, we do trade shows. And lately, I'm gonna say in a few years, we've been doing a lot of consulting, which is the basis of every startup. So you're gonna penetrate in a market and you're gonna ship a product and you wanna know, how does that product get there? What is it gonna pay for duties and taxes? What are the restrictions in that destination country, and so forth. So, so we do a lot of consulting and planning with new companies. We've done, by the way, we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary this year. We've done a lot of wonderful projects through the years. We continue to do them. I keep showing the same pictures because we forget to take pictures of the new projects we have, but we do a lot of project cargo like this one, chartering planes going all over the world with radioactive material or any material for a particular factory, moving components for different factories around the world in remote locations like in Bonaire. And we move a lot of art product around the world and trade show materials like the spiders from Louis Bourgeois. So if you are penetrating in Canada, first of all, you should know how big Canada is and how difficult it can be to get product to a certain location, especially during COVID time, which we will talk in my last slide, the updates in logistics and supply chain during COVID, which has been challenging and a nightmare for a lot of people. So understanding how big Canada is and how easy and not easy sometimes is to get products from point A to point B, it's very, very important. I get phone calls, people saying, Arnaud, I need to send something to Quebec. Well, Quebec is possibly the largest province in Canada, so you need to know the postal code where the product is going so we can give you the correct transportation cost. So Mello Hawk Logistics, we have been involved in Canadian business culture for a very long time. Peter Hawkins, my partner, and I, we sit in different boards in Canada and in Brazil, and we believe in giving back to society with our knowledge and what we gain on our experience to enrich the lives of new entrepreneurs in Canada. So we're very proud of the work that we do together as volunteers in Canada. I like to start this presentation. If you're going to move cargo, the first thing you should know is Inco Terms. If you don't know what Inco Terms are, you need to get a lesson on it. They are more than just FOB and CIF. So you should know there is 11 Inco Terms, and every 10 years they are revised. So we are now working with Inco Terms 2020. So if you're doing a contract or negotiating a sale, this what it should be on every contract, every commercial invoice you do, because Inco Terms is basically the transfer of risk and cost between the seller and the buyer. And if something happens on transport, who is responsible to replace that product, right? And who is going to pay for the insurance and whatever happens to that transaction. A lot of people don't understand Inco Terms, and when you have a loss, you start blaming each other. And the first thing the court is going to look is what Inco Terms did you choose on that movement. So very, very important. And they're written in a very specific way. So again, everything on this presentation, I'm happy to talk to you about at a later time. You can book some time and we can discuss your needs. Exporting from Brazil, we're talking Brazil, Canada, of course. So if you're exporting to Brazil, you should know that a company in Brazil, in order to export, they should have a radar, which is basically a permission with Brazilian customs. If you don't have this, you cannot remove your product from Brazilian soil. Today, it's very easy to obtain a radar, about 48 hours, and not only for exporting and to import as well. So again, happy to guide you on this. Of course, exporting from Brazil, depending on the product, you might need special licenses to remove that product from Brazil, like fresh fruits or meat. They require phytosanitary certificates in order to leave Brazil, so they can be cleared at the destination country. So each product is very specific. It's related to the HS code or the classification of the product. So again, lots of details if you're exporting food or some controlled items. Importing into Canada, which for me, it is basically the easiest country to import a product to. As we heard in this presentation from everyone, Canada has a lot of incentive in order for you to start your business and also import your own product. So importation into Canada is done on a federal level, not on a provincial level. I got a lot of people calling me saying, Arno, am I going to pay 13% tax in Ontario when I import a product? No, you're not going to pay the 13% HST tax, but you will pay basically two taxes. You pay duty based on the harmonized classification of that product, and GST, which is a federal tax, 5% of the Canadian value of your commercial invoice. Some food items, some fruits and some vegetables, they are free of duty and GST because we have to import a lot of things into Canada. As you will note that a lot of products that we bring here have a very low rate of duty or no duty whatsoever. So that's why I say Canada is a very easy country to deal with in terms of importation. Who can import into Canada? Well, basically anybody. You can have a sole proprietorship, you can have a partnership, you can have a corporation. And a lot of people start with a sole proprietorship, and then as the business progresses, they turn that into a corporation for tax reasons, of course. So anyone, as long as you have a business number and you activate your company to import and export, you can import a product here and export as well. And also, did you know, when I talk about Canada being an easy country to import products, is that clearance of shipments take about 15 minutes to an hour. Our customs is open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Inspection can be very fast here, 24 to 72 hours. And a foreign company can also be established to be their own importer into Canada. So let's say you don't have a partner here, you haven't established here, we can register your foreign company and you basically export and import to yourself so you can get samples into Canada. I always recommend people shipping items directly to Canada without passing through the US, especially if it's food related, and we can talk about routes at another time. We'll talk about compliance now. Canada has a new program a few years called eManifest. Everything must be pre-declared before coming to Canada. If you're working with a freight forwarder internationally, make sure they know this regulation because the fines are quite high, $5,000 for non-compliance. And again, happy to explain this process for you. If you're importing food into Canada, be very careful. Lots of restrictions. CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, requires a Canadian company to be registered, to have an account, to pay a fee, which is valid for 2 years, and obtain a license prior to the goods arriving in Canada. The importation of food is very controlled nowadays, and it's suffering changes constantly. So make sure your importer of food here has the licenses that they need. Also, not only the licenses, but also the packaging and labeling of cargo food items into Canada is highly controlled. We have specific ways that package should be labeled with English and French if you're going to negotiate cargo across Canada. So very important to understand how packaging works. Importing restrictions, I get these questions every day. Dairy products, of course, very controlled in Canada. If you don't have quota to import dairy products, you're going to pay up to 255% or more of duty on cheese or dairy products. Alcohol beverages are controlled by the government by province. So you need to make sure if you're going to try to sell beverage into Canada, alcohol beverages, your importer here has the license to be able to clear it. The importation of alcohol beverages is controlled by province, and each province has only one customs brokerage that has the authorization to clear alcohol, which means we, Mellow Hawk, being a broker, cannot clear alcohol items for anybody. And of course, they are sold in specific stores. If you don't know, very, very controlled. If you're bringing food items to Canada, of course, the CL Food Show, it's a great way to showcase your products. The Brazilian government has an amazing booth and pavilion in every show. And I'm sure you can speak to the Trade Commission of the Brazilian government here in Toronto, so they can give you details. The next CL is in April in Montreal, and we're going to be there for sure. Now let's go to Kovid Updates, which is the highlight of this presentation. As you know, the world has been hit with major supply chain delays due to COVID, and prices of ocean have been skyrocketed last year to up to $27,000 per container from China to North America, or basically from China to anywhere in the world. We see now prices coming down to $15,000 up to $16,000 per container from China, but huge backlogs and lockdowns due to COVID, most recently in Shanghai, causing rotation delays in vessels, which is causing delays in loading containers in vessels, and of course, delays in arriving those containers at destination country. So be very careful if you're moving ocean freight nowadays. You need to establish a partnership with a freight forwarder that knows their lane, that knows the market, so you can get real-time information. Don't be fooled by the promises of $7,000, $5,000 freight prices for containers. Well, your containers are not going to get loaded on any vessel because the steamship lines are making billions of dollars charging priority rate to load containers. As a result of the delays in ocean, air freight also is suffering backlogs. Of course, huge machines that normally go by ocean are now going by air freight. We're getting requests to move large equipment by air. And of course, the airlines are also taking advantage now that all the flights resume worldwide, and rates are being charged at a priority all the time if you really want your cargo to move. Air freight rates came down a little bit from 2021, but they're still considered very, very high in comparison to 2019. And of course, we have major problem with trucking across Canada and North America. There is driver shortage, not enough trucks to contain all the demand that we have in Canada, especially at port locations. So nowadays, oh my God, that's my alarm. And nowadays, knowing who you are dealing with and make sure that that freight forwarder has contracts with trucking companies all over, for sure, can facilitate the continued movement of your containers. Melohawk has developed in 2020 LCL, frozen and dry consolidation from Brazil to Canada. We have been very successful and the only freight forwarder in Canada to bring frozen LCL cargo to Canada. So if you want more information on the service, please contact me. Also, we handle a lot of e-commerce fulfillment out of our warehouse in Mississauga, and we've been helping a lot of small and medium-sized businesses stock and ship their products across Canada and the US. And my summary checklist: know your Inco term, know your HS code for your products and make sure that they can be imported, understand how to export or import into Brazil if you're dealing with that market, confirm labeling and documentation as part of your compliance, and understand shipping options and updates on Kovid worldwide on a daily basis, because prices can change in an hour. And if you promise a price to your client, you're going to have to swallow the increase if that's the case. Also, Peter and I, we host our own podcast called Logistics in Motion on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and follow us on Instagram for updates on what's happening in Canada, Brazil, and the world. And I like to close my presentations to say that everyone should also be focused on your business, have respect for everyone you deal with, especially in Canada, where diversity and inclusion are so important. Have integrity always in what you do, and again, passion on everything that you bring to the table, because everybody can read you. Thank you so much. My name is Arno Mello. I'm the president for Melohawk Logistics, and I don't know why the caller changed here, but that's my email. Thank you, Carolina. Thanks, everyone. And I think I'm on time.
Yes, you are 100%.
Hi,
So hello, I am going to take over from Carolina right now. I'm Peter Hawkins, and I'm the co-chair of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce. And I want to really stress that all of these speakers are actually experts in their field, and they're all members of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, for which we are very, very grateful. And I would like to know if anybody has any questions they would like to bring up. And one thing, Consul General Vanja Norberga brought up the fact that there is the Cial in Montreal. If you were looking for an opportunity to see what the food market is, the Cial is coming up. And there's also the restaurant show in May 9th to the 11th on 2022 in Toronto. Both two great opportunities if you're thinking of bringing food here. And so I would like to actually take this time to introduce Ambassador Pedro Borio, who is the ambassador from Brazil to Canada. And he has really been a great friend of the Chamber. And we are always glad to hear what he has to say. And we love the fact that he's been so accessible. So thank you so much, sir. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good afternoon, boa tarde, bonjour à tous. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I was following the meeting. It's like a family meeting. It's very good to see all of you so active. I know that the Chamber has spent the last few weeks devoted to mining. We hope to see you in person in June. That's another meeting I think should be stressed that the PTAC will happen, and we hope to have a lot of Brazilians again coming this year. I was very glad to see the level of the presentations today, the sharpness, the precision of the technical information. I think this is very useful. In one hand, it shows everybody that there is no such thing as a free lunch, as the saying goes. But on the other hand, it should be stressed that it can be done. Lots of people have done it. And the good news is that despite the pandemic and all the difficulties that we shared, last year, we just got the Canadian statistics consolidated recently, and we broke every single record in terms of trade, Canada, Brazil, and investment. That shows a very desirable and very welcome vitality. We also are totally convinced that when companies or business people or Brazilians simply come to Canada, they are not just moving to Canada, but they are going to contribute also to the Brazil business situation picture and to the exchanges with Brazil. That's what our experience shows. And for those who might be watching as possible newcomers, they should know that they will be in very good company. We have about 160,000 Brazilians here in Canada, very well integrated into the Canadian society, very orderly community, very high level in terms of education, very productive. And it goes from the small new company just starting to giants like Gerdau, Vale do Rio Doce, JBS, and other that are very active in this country. Very happy to note also that my colleague and Consul General in Toronto, Varja Nóbrega, is participating today, and that gives me the chance to stress also for all of those who are considering coming to Canada that we have offices, not only the embassy here in Ottawa, but also the consulates in Toronto, in Montreal, and in Vancouver. And I always repeat that there's no bad question. The only bad question is the one that is not asked. So don't hesitate to reach out to us also if we can help you with figuring out what to do. I think today was an excellent lesson showing that there are certain obvious steps that should not be circumvented. I mean, the business advice that Paula gave from a more general point of view, the legal advice that Tassian pointed out so clearly, the immigration aspects that Sonia expressed so well. So we are going to be part of this team trying to help you all. In the case of those bringing products to Canada also are known, did a super sharp presentation. So it's a real pleasure for me to be part of this group. Marcelo, Carolina, I hope I'm not missing anyone. And also to you, Peter, thank you for the very generous introduction as usual. I hope to see you all in person very soon. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir. And I'm going to bring back Carolina.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks, Peter, for stepping in. Some technical problems on my side. But so I just wanted to again, to thank everyone for being here, everybody that stayed for the last 2 hours here with us to learn a little bit more what it takes to business in Canada, to bring your company into Canada. As you could witness today, Canada has an excellent environment for entrepreneurship, a stable economy, and a market that encourages less competition between companies and is well positioned as a great country for those who want to internationalize and use Canada as a launchpad to find clients and suppliers around the world. The presentations and contact information of the companies involved with the BCCC Business Hub will be posted on our website. We're launching a page dedicated to this new business hub, where you can find not only the contact information of our speakers, information about the companies, as well as some very important tips that will help you in your journey of internationalizing to Canada. We'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our annual sponsors, Vale, EDC Export Development Canada, Brookfield Lending Mining, Sescom Barrier, TSX Venture Exchange, and Toronto Stock Exchange for the continued support. I'd also like to thank our speakers today for sharing their knowledge and expertise with our audience and our guests and the companies who are part of the Business Hub, of course, Mandala Group, Oziel Law, Mirhaba Shashnau, Mellowhawk Logistics, and iRise Media, who is not here with us today, but will be joining the Business Hub, providing advertising and communication to those companies looking into create a bigger brand awareness here in Canada. So thank you everyone for your commitment. I would also like to thank, of course, our partners, the Trade Commissioner Services and the Consulate of Canada in São Paulo, and Elise, Marcelo, and all the Trade Commissioners team are there to support you and to help you. As well, of course, the Brazilian presence here in Canada through the Embassy of Brazil in Ottawa, Ambassador Borio, thanks for the partnership, the Consulate of Brazil in Toronto through Ambassador Varja Nóbrega, the Consul General of Brazil in Vancouver through Ambassador Renato Mosca, and of course the Consulate General of Brazil in Montreal through Ambassador Nedilson Jorge and their teams. So thank you everyone. If there are any questions, oh, what are exactly the Business Hub and what are the futures planned for this new tool? So the Business Hub is basically, we gather together in one spot all the resources that a Brazilian company needs to come to Canada. So we have a group of companies that are involved that can provide different services, either as market entry, matchmaking, corporate law, immigration law, logistics, and communication. And these are trusted companies. These are companies that we really worked with before, that we know can deliver an excellent job to the Brazilian companies coming to Canada. They have their own expertise with the Brazilian markets and dealing with Brazilian companies, so they're well positioned to support everyone who is interested in establishing a presence here in Canada. And the Business Hub is just a way to kind of bring them all together and create that gateway where you can find all the useful information to help you make a decision to come to Canada, internationalize your company. And Peter, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words as well about that.
I just wanted to showcase the fact that these experts are all members of the BCCC, and these are people that we have been involved with for many years and have been really impressed with what they can offer anyone who wants to internationalize and anyone who wants to bring their business to Canada and export products, and of course the other direction too. We work both ways. And so all of these people are members. We welcome everyone else who would like to be a member. This will be a periodic event. We will do as needed, but I do want you to know that networking happens every day. So if you want to reach out to anyone, you can do it right now. And we would be happy to respond, and so would all the panelists. And in fact, so would all the people on this list. Thanks so much. Carolina, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Peter, for all your support. So I don't know if Peter introduced himself. I had to step away, but Peter is the co-chair of the BCCC. He's been helping us a lot on putting all those projects and those plans together. So thank you back to you for all your support and everything that you've done and you do for the Chamber. Any questions you might have, please feel free to connect with me or my team. I'll add my email in the chat for everyone. If you have any questions about how to become a member and how the Chamber can support you on your Canadian ventures or Brazilian ventures, please stay in touch, please connect with us, and I'll be happy to book a meeting with you and explain how we support our members. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I see you all very soon. Thank you.